So my name is Jeff Smith. I am the Teacher Ranger teacher here in San Juan National Historical Park this summer of 2014. I'm also a local teacher at Spring Street International School. And my primary goal is to answer the question for San Juan National Historical Parks: how do the national parks, develop deeper and more meaningful relationships with ultimately local students, but primarily that's going to be through local teachers, as I'll talk about. In looking at the program this summer, I think the number one thing I realized was that your in-season program, what I consider, say, from Memorial Day through Labor Day, is very robust. It does a great job with the 150 to 200,000 tourists that come through every year. And so I don't have any recommendations on your in-season program. I think it does a great job. And as you look at these different recommendations, if any of them impact your in-season program, I would really consider whether or not that's the best use of your resources given your staffing challenges, etc. However, after Labor Day, I think there are some very unique opportunities that the National Parks has to work with San Juan Island schools. There's very few schools that can say they live within a 10 or 15-minute drive of a national park, and especially a national park that has sort of the depth and the historical mojo of San Juan National Historical Park. So there are some specific things that we can do in the next couple of years in the off season. But again, I would pay a lot of attention to the in-season stuff and don't sacrifice that for any of the other stuff that you might think about doing. So there's basically two parts to this. The first is where I'm going to lay out initial conditions. So there are 4 initial conditions that I think if you pay attention to these, Raina, you're going to be a lot more successful. And as long as you understand these 4, I think the actual implementation pieces will be much easier. So those 4 are, number 1, that students are your customers, but teachers are your gatekeepers. If you understand the difference between those two, I think you're going to be a lot more successful. Number 2 is, I want you to think, and I'll give you a picture for this in a minute, I want you to think of San Juan Island as Treasure Island, right? And so we'll try to make sure you understand what I mean by that. Number 3, relationships, how important those are as you do this work. And then finally, last but not least, understanding teachers' pain points and the common ground that you have with them in your national park work. I think if you understand those 4, students are your customers, teachers are your gatekeepers, Treasure Island as San Juan Island, relationships, and pain points, I think if you keep those 4 in mind, you're going to have a lot of fun implementing some of the things that I'm going to lay out for you in the second half of my presentation. So first initial condition is that students are your customers, but teachers are your gatekeepers. If you want to serve San Juan Island students, you have to understand this one fundamental reality. Their teachers are the gatekeepers. If you can get by the teacher, you can get to the kids. If you give the teacher any reason to resist, we're a very creative bunch when it comes to resisting, you'll never get to the kids. So in all of the following, I want you to keep in mind that whole teacher equals gatekeeper paradigm is crucial. If you can get them online and get them on board, then the national parks work that you get to do in and with schools could be amazing. If you let us stand off, like we're really good at doing as teachers, then those 2 groups, national parks and local students, they stay isolated. They don't ever come together. So the second part I want you to think about is San Juan Island as Treasure Island. So think about this analogy. Think of the classic novel Treasure Island. And what I want you to do is on this side picture treasure chests that are full of student learning experiences. They're educational riches, they're just waiting for students, and they're all over our island. But they're buried really deep. Okay? Nobody, hardly anybody, is able to see them. Okay? Now picture somebody, I don't know, let's call her Raina, who knows where these treasures are buried, who knows how to find those chests. And imagine kids who love jewels, but they don't know where they are. Okay? What they need is someone who can get to them or who can get the treasure to them. All right, so here's the picture that I want you to have. On this one side, I want you to picture San Juan National Historical Park and all of the kinds of things that you offer: science, history, archaeology, anthropology, all the different things that are possible with San Juan National Historical Park. And on the other side, I want you to put all of your schools. Think about Spring Street, Friday Harbor Elementary, Still Point, Paideia, the preschools. The schools are trying to educate their kids in the best manner possible, and they have a variety of different philosophies and ways of doing that. But that shouldn't matter to national parks, right? You all are a treasure. You have a treasure. Whether people wear pearls to the picnic or they wear it to the opera, they still like the pearls. Okay. So here's the question that you have to answer: how do you connect the two? You have the treasure. You have the kids. How do they connect? You have to have, I would argue, treasure experts. You have to have those brave souls who can lead us as teachers out there to where those treasures are. The treasure won't discover itself, and like the biblical character who realizes there's a treasure in the field and can't wait to go buy that property, area schools don't realize that there's treasures right there and what they're missing. And the nice thing about that is you can put a yet on the end of that sentence, and you, Raina, can connect them. Okay, so third initial condition. This one's simple, but we forget it all the time. So I'll start with, they always ask a real estate agent, what's the three most important things in real estate? And he thinks really hard and he says, location, location, and location. As you move through this off season, I want you to think about relationships, relationships, relationships. Think about the number of teacher connections that you make, the depth of those connections. Don't worry about how many kids are out in the field yet. Ultimately, you'll get local students out there, but that'll only be because of the trust and the relationships that you build with teachers, local teachers. We all work with people that we like. We always have. And so winning the hearts and the minds of local teachers will open doors to their classrooms and open their eyes to the possible enriching opportunities that San Juan National Historical Park offers. Once you get to the recommendation stuff, it's all built on this whole relationship building idea. If you do that, you're going to be successful. You don't build relationships, it doesn't matter what the park's offering. No one's ever going to hear about it. So the last final initial condition I want you to understand is pain points and common ground. As I interviewed teachers, they had three main pain points. The first was, they said, I really don't like to teach history or science or archaeology. I don't feel qualified, and I'm out of my depth when it comes to some of those. The second thing that they said was, I can't find interesting ways to teach it, or I can't find worthwhile curricular things on which to focus. And then the third, which maybe is the toughest one to crack, is my curricular train leaves every morning. I don't have a chance. I need to stay in my book. I need to stay in my classroom in order to be efficient and accomplish all the things that I'm supposed to teach. What you need to understand about these three pain points is that teachers aren't logical, right? None of us are logical. We make choices about who to work with based on friendships, based on relationships. And the San Juan Island situation is characterized by these three things. Okay? So picture two circles that sort of intersect. On the one side, you have terrific educational resources in San Juan National Historical Park. And in that, I would include your staff as well. Right? You have rich field experiences, you have experts, on and on it goes. On the other side, you have several schools that are trying to service a few hundred local students. They have a couple of needs. They want somebody other than them, other than the teacher, to teach. They want to get out of their classroom, even though they're not sure they possibly can. And they want to do something meaningful with their kids. With the exception of Sharon Massey and Debbie Taylor, I don't think there's any long-term cross-pollination happening between these two groups yet. Okay, so here's what the current situation looks like, but here's where it gets interesting. If you look at that intersection between those two, there's data and there's living history and a whole bunch of other things as you think about it. This, Raina, is where you would live, right, in between these two. And what I want you to do is think about yourself in terms of this common ground. like the Yetta in Fiddler on the Roof. You remember that movie? The very beginning of the movie, this old lady comes waddling through town and comes to the house, and she's the matchmaker, right? Yetta. And she doesn't marry anybody herself. She's already been married, and her husband died a long time ago. But she knows who needs to be matched up. And so, Raina, here's what I want you to do is to think about yourself as Yetta. You know the experts. You know Mike and Doug and Jeremy and Gerald and whoever else I'm forgetting. And you're going to know the teachers. All you have to do is Yetta-like matchmaking. It'll be fun. And the schools don't know how much they need you, the San Juan National Historical Park, but they don't know that yet. They will. So now we're going to talk about implementation. And as we talk about things to do, I want you to think about 3 levels of teachers. The first level is what I'm going to refer to as the Sharon and Debbie level. Okay? Both these teachers are dedicated to you personally, and they're also dedicated to experiential, place-based education. They've bought in, and they love you, which is not insignificant. You want to eventually get as many teachers to this level as possible, but just right now, stay with these 2. In Sharon's case, I would recommend that you document somehow, whether it's video or other media, the kinds of things that you're doing with her class. Okay? If you can make those experiences portable, then other teachers are going to see it. They're going to say, wow, why can't I want to do that with my kids, right? But you have to make those experiences portable, and I think Sharon would be very amenable to that. In Debbie's case, I think you need to just expand your collaboration with her. Start with a simple question. What do you want me to do, right? What do you want to do with us? I would also have Debbie set up a meeting with her other elementary teachers. The nice thing about elementary is they teach science and history, so both of those could work. And again, the magic is in the question, right? What do you want to do with us, or how can I help you? If you come out of that meeting with action steps or action items, and I think you will, just move on those action items, circle back to those teachers. Remember, it's relationships, relationships, relationships. If you nurture those relationships, you'll get kids into the field. There's no doubt about it in my mind. So that's the first level. Second level is what I'm going to call relationship level. Okay, so I was watching TV the other night, and there's this new non-dating dating service, and it's called It's Just Lunch. Okay, so they've taken all the pressure and the poison out of it. No commitment. You're just having lunch. I want you to think about this relationship level in the same way. There's a number of teachers in Friday Harbor who would have an initial cup of coffee with you. They won't say no to that. I would say make those contacts as best you can. Go slow. Be strategic. But as you make contact with those who meet you, amazing things can happen. Right? You'll find more Debbies and Sharons out there than you know. The key is don't try to meet with every single teacher because they won't all meet with you. We're kind of stubborn when it comes to that. And you don't have the bandwidth to try to do that. So just meet with pick those who are picking you, basically. Who will meet with you? Put them on the calendar. Go have coffee. Relationships, relationships, relationships. Okay? The third level, which I think is kind of the most interesting and could be the most fun, is what I call the jealous level. Okay, so there's going to be a group, inevitably there's going to be a group of students a group of teachers who either won't initially meet with you or they don't know what the parks have to offer, so it's not even on their radar. Here's how they're going to find out about you. They're going to hear what a good job you're doing with their colleagues. Okay, they're going to hear the stories in the workroom, they're going to see the enthusiasm of their fellow teachers or their kids, and they're going to want to play. So just do a good job, do a great job with the teacher who wants to play, and then eventually you'll get these late adopters. So think about those 3 levels as you move through the work. So besides the 3 levels, I want to talk to you for a minute about how to move up those levels and through those levels. I have a friend, and one of his best sayings is, if you want to get heard, you have to get a hearing. Okay, so how do you, Raina, or San Juan National Historical Park, get a hearing? I want you to start thinking about signal versus noise. Okay, so the signal is all of the things that the park is doing really well, okay, and could offer to the schools if they were given a chance. Things like data collection, species verification, beach cataloging, how peace won over war, in American Camp, for example. The native plant nursery, water sampling, butterfly restoration, all of those kinds of killer things that the park is doing, but that nobody knows about, right? So that's your signal. Keep that in mind. How do I get that signal to come through to teachers? Well, in order to do that, you're going to have to decrease the noise, right? So noise is just the excuses that we make as teachers when we either don't want to do something or we think it's just a bridge too far, we can't do it. Dan Pink, in his book To Sell as Human, says remove all the reasons that someone can say no, and you're much more likely to get to a yes. So what are the no's, or what are the noise in the school side? Transportation costs is the one that comes up all the time, right? So make sure you have a relationship where you can say, listen, we have grant money for that. We can pay for your bus or your transportation. Don't go big, go small. Small day trips, half-day things. Start with winnable things. Don't try to get them to sign up for something that's, say 3 or 4 days. They won't do it. Get into their classrooms. However you do this, get into their classrooms. Get FaceTime with them and their students. Make them like you, okay? And they will. If you get into their rooms, they will like you. You're a very likable person. You're not scary at all. And then finally, last but certainly not least, if you meet them in their classrooms, they're eventually going to meet you in your field classrooms, okay? It will reciprocate back and forth. But again, if you want to get heard, you have to get a hearing. So think about, how do I get a hearing? Signal versus noise. All right, fun time. Here we go. We're going to get to your list, the RANO list. So I really want you to focus on 2 main things, and only 2. The first is make contact with key teachers at the schools that want you. I wouldn't waste time trying to get other schools. Just go where the grass is green. So in that vein, start with Debbie. Okay, use your on-ramp with her at Friday Harbor Elementary. You can get eyeballs and ears on the kinds of things that you want. They trust her. Go for it there. Come to Spring Street. I'll make sure you get introduced to Chuck. He's our chemistry teacher, so for the water sampling stuff that we've talked about. Keep fostering those opportunities with Tim or Sharon. I think you're already way down the track on that. And then for sure, I will make sure I introduce you to our history department. So that's me, Kate, and Caroline. We already love you, right? We already love San Juan National Historical Parks, and we're about place-based experiential ed. Our grass is green, so just, come on over. 2 other schools that I can point you to and introduce you to people. The first is at Paideia. You already know Scott from your work on the play with him, but I'll introduce you to Chris Michael, who's kind of middle school science, and Judy Adams, who's kindergarten 1-2. They both love field trips, and they don't have any of the restrictions on transportation that the public school does. So they would be terrific, and I'll make sure you get a meeting with them in the next couple of weeks. And then last but not least is the Lighthouse Preschool. I think you ought to, I can get you a meeting with Autumn Halleck. She is the director at Lighthouse. They may not be able to get to you in terms of the park and field trips, but I know they would love to have you or Jeremy or Mike. Mike comes in costume, for example. They would be all over that, and they would love that. So the first thing to do is make contact with the schools and the teachers that want to work with you. Second thing, keep contact with those teachers. I know it sounds really kind of duh, but once you make contact, schedule it. Keep contact with them. Coffees count. I'm not kidding, okay? So when you sit down with them, ask them what they're doing. Ask them how things are going. Make it about them, and you are a natural at this, by the way, and you're going to build relational capital. So as you keep contact, keep thinking, what is it that builds this relationship long term? Not am I getting them to sign on right away, but what builds relationship? Ongoing contact, whether you decide to do that every couple of weeks, circle back, or every month, however you decide to do that, ongoing contact will deepen those teacher relationships. It'll also give you the opportunity to, because you're getting a hearing, okay, because you have that relationship, it'll also give you an opportunity to say, hey, here's what the park's doing in the next 2 months, or seasonally as things change, you'll have the on-ramp with those teachers, okay? But your list is really those 2 things. Make contact with key teachers at the schools that you want, and keep contact with those teachers at the schools that want you, and the rest will flow from those relationships. So now that I've given you all this different stuff to think about, I want you to think about a timeline. Okay, what's realistic for you to do? What's doable for you? I know you got a lot of other responsibilities besides just teachers and just schools here on the island. So first and foremost, I want you to remember what I said at the beginning. Don't sacrifice the in-season work. Okay, there's thousands of people that get serviced by you and the national parks during that time. Don't mess with that. It's high quality. Keep it up. But I do want you to think about 4 different segments over the next 2 years. First is 2014-15 off season. This coming fall, winter, spring, and you have one job. Okay, that job is to develop your teacher relationships. Don't worry about any of the program stuff. Don't worry about curriculum. Just, are you circling back? Are you having ongoing conversations that are deepening with those teachers that want you? Focus on them. Next summer of 2015, I think you can definitely work on expanding your in-summer programs, whether that's Island Stewards, the group from Oregon that comes up, whatever it is that you're already doing, the butterfly restoration stuff. If you can expand that, it'd be great. But I don't think you have to do anything new. I think your focus should be on expanding what you already have, at least for next summer, 2015. The third kind of period is next off season of 2015-2016. So think of a year from now, next fall, not this coming fall. I think you should focus on trying to have an experiential program with each of the main schools that you want to focus on. So Spring Street, obviously, we'd love to have you both science and history doing something with us. I think Paideia is a very rich environment for you. You already know Scott. You have relationships with some of their other teachers by the end of this upcoming year. They would love to do some work with you. Friday Harbor Elementary, expand that scenario from Debbie. Find other willing teachers who want to be involved. Still Point, I don't have any contacts with them, but I think definitely if you make some inroads there this year, you can definitely do some work with them. They love experiential ed. They love place as sort of the context of what they teach or how they teach. So, develop that. And then last but certainly not least in terms of school, for not this fall but the following fall, Lighthouse Preschool is a great place that you can, I think, can expand a lot of interesting things. Have Mike visit, for example. Preschool boys love to dig. So if Jeremy's still on staff and you still have an archaeological dig out at British Camp, get those preschool boys out there, right? Maybe they don't get to do a shovel, but see what Jeremy could do with them. It could be a lot of fun. And then the summer of 2016, I think, is when you should think about, do you do a summer teacher program, similar to what you've seen either Glacier or North Cascades do? Do you do it in conjunction with North Cascades? I think over the off season of 2015, 2016, you could pilot some of these kinds of things you're thinking of doing in the summer with local teachers. And what would be cool about that is you could have real life teachers tell you what works and what doesn't. And you could also figure out what it is you want to do, right? What's doable, what could work on the island, etc. But really, I think if you give yourself those two years to really kind of flesh this out, I think that's doable. So develop relationships this fall, winter, spring, expand your programs next summer, work on having a bona fide experiential program in each of the schools for 2015, 2016, and then summer of 2016, think about summer teacher program or any of those kinds of things. So I remember as a kid hearing the question of if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? I don't know if you ever heard that riddle. But what I want you to do is think about the San Juan National Historical Parks as that tree, right? And what I experienced this summer as I was interviewing teachers was they knew you were there, but they never heard the tree fall. And what I think about is the sorts of transformational experiences that you could offer to our local students. But like that tree, there's very few teachers that know about them or hear about them yet. Okay, and that key word is yet. I'm really thankful I got to be in this program this summer. I think of one trip in particular when I was standing on the redoubt with Mike Vorey, and he's laying out all this history, and I'm seeing where Pickett landed. I'm seeing the British ships out in Griffin Bay and then moving around to the other side. And the living aspect of that and how transformational that was for me and how transformational it could be for my kids. It was crucial to understanding not just that you're a resource, but what kind of resource you are, and how, if we can build these sort of critical teacher relationships, you can transform our education or the education we provide here in Friday Harbor. We all want deeper and more meaningful learning experiences, both for ourselves and for our kids. And I think as you build these relationships, we can really show what a special place San Juan Island is. So I look forward to seeing you do that.